or would you like our chairman of our committee to start? You want to come up? You ready?
I'm having technical difficulties.
Do you want to work on your technical difficulties?
Sure, give me a couple more minutes and
Yeah.
then I'll give up if I can't get it working.
Okay, then Alan, why don't you come on up and talk about our Payson Citizens Firewise Committee, isn't that the name of it? I don't even know what
That's close enough.
That's close enough. Okay, and what we do, and how we hired this gentleman, maybe.
Well, we didn't hire him.
Well, we got a say in it.
We do have a special presentation tonight, and Kevin is he's actually our fuels manager for the town of Payson. And some of you are going to say, fuels, what does that mean? Well, he's actually the man that actually tells us what we need to do to clear our properties or to make this town fire-wise. Now, what Shirley and I are a part of is the Firewise Council. And for a little over a year for me, and I don't know how long for you.
About 3 or 4 years.
Yeah. And it was something that's very near and dear to my heart. I was a firefighter for 33 years in Southern California and retired out of the San Bernardino County Fire Department as a public information officer for the Mountain Division. So one of my duties as a firefighter, of course, was to drive around in the engine and inspect homes in my fire district, which was Lake Arrowhead at the time. And I would inspect homes, and we would actually fill out information that those people needed to take care of firewising their houses. Back then, we didn't call it firewising. We called it fuels managing, which is the same thing that Kevin is talking about tonight. So what we would do as an engine company is we would drive around and we would look at people's homes. We'd check to see how their clearance was with their weeds, their bushes, their trees, make sure they had fire suppressors in their fireplaces. Anyway, what we did was firewising for many, many years. I started out doing that with San Bernardino County Fire Department after we went from Lake Arrowhead Fire to San Bernardino County Fire Department. So it was an even bigger job that we had to drive around and do that. After a while, it became too much for the engine companies, and we gave it over to the Fire Prevention Division. And it was individuals that go drive around different communities in Southern California, in San Bernardino County, and tell people what they needed to do to make their houses more fire safe. So that's kind of what, when I retired and moved here to Payson, it was something that was near and dear to my heart. And it's very important that each and every one of us has that mentality that we need to maintain our properties to the point of where we don't get fire that goes from one house to another house to another house. Now, in Southern California, it's a bit different than what the conditions we have here. We have what we call the Santa Ana winds in Southern California, and those are the things that are probably the hardest thing to deal with. I know as a firefighter, we couldn't fight those fires, we could only steer them. In other words, we couldn't get in front of the fire and try to stop it. We could steer it through an area, and that's just about all we ever did. Anything over 20 miles an hour, it's very, very hard to fight fire. We don't have that problem so much here in Payson. And I think that probably what the situation's going to be is we'll get a plume-driven fire, which means that the fire tends to create its own weather. As the fire builds, it actually climbs in the climate many thousands of feet in the air, but as it does so, it creates this flow of debris and burning material that can rain down in other areas. And I think that's probably the situation we're going to have in Payson, if, I should say, when it happens, because it will happen someday. So what we can do as property owners, we can actually clear our properties to the point of where we're not going to get that fire that's going to come from the vegetation into our house. And that's what the Firewise Committee wants to do, is we want to educate everybody in the in the community of Payson to Firewise their property. That means you need to maintain the ladder fuels, which is the grass to the brush to the trees. Somewhere along that ladder fuel, we need to eliminate those steps that it causes them to get into the trees or into your house. Anyway, what we're trying to do is make people aware of this. It's an education process. And so one thing that I'm called up here to do tonight is to ask if there's anybody that would be interested in joining our Firewise Council. We've had some people quit and move on to other things because they're busy doing things in the community. So I'm here to recruit people if they want to come Thursday at the fire station. They're on Main Street at 1 o'clock. We're going to have our Firewise Council meeting. And if anybody's interested, you can come and be with us at the meeting and kind of find out what we do and get a little more information of what Firewise is all about.
Which fire station? On Main?
On Main, yeah.
On Thursday?
Thursday?
What's
1 o'clock.
particular Thursday?
It's usually the third Thursday of the
Yes.
month.
Huh?
Third Thursday of the month.
Third, okay.
Good. Is he ready?
Are you about ready, Kevin? Okay, so I'd like to introduce you to Kevin McCully. And back in June or so, we were asked as the Citizens Firewise Committee to help determine who should be hired. I mean, they had it pretty much in their head anyhow, but they were nice enough to bring 3 people forward for us to help to determine who should be hired. And he is a direct employee of the fire department,
Yes.
not at the town of Payson, but he's employed by Payson, but he's employed by the fire department of the town of Payson. Started July 1st, right?
May 6th, actually.
Oh, May 6th, he started before the fiscal year. And back, the Firewise Committee several years ago, when we put forth an ordinance that got voted down, one of the stipulations of coming back and looking for that is Chief Staub requested funding for a fuels manager that would work with the citizens in the town and work with the committee. And so he's superior to we committee members, by the way, although we get to give our input.
He's our liaison.
He's
to
our
the fire
liaison
department.
to the
Yeah.
fire department, yeah. So anyhow, we'll have you tell a little bit about where you came from and how you came to Payson and what you have planned. Did you share about the trainings that we went to? Oh, well, you can tell them
Right.
about the trainings that some of us went to
Okay.
and
Yeah.
why we did it.
Kevin and I have a lot in common. As a matter of fact, I think we probably worked many fires together, we just didn't know it.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, so take the mic, Kevin McCully.
All right.
I'm sorry, I have junk stacked
okay.
back there.
Well, I had a 30-year career in California in the fire service. I started and I grew up by Yosemite, up in the mountains. So then I eventually moved to San Diego to go to college and wound up continuing my fire service career down there and finished out the rest of my career in San Diego County. The last part of my career, well, I've worked probably about 7 or 8 years in fuel management in San Diego County. And, you know, obviously I was on an engine and my rank when I retired was a fire captain. I retired, we found Payson, we loved the area. It reminds me a little bit of home where I grew up by Yosemite. So my wife and I moved up here. And then a couple months after we moved up, I saw the advertisement for this job. And looking around the town, I could tell we definitely need some help in fuels management. And so I applied for it, and hopefully I can help out with that, that effort. So the committee, which Shirley is on, they do a lot of public outreach for us, and for the
There we go.
sorry. So the committee does a lot of public outreach for us, and they also help me prioritize some of the goals that we're doing within the community, as far as looking at what areas need to be looked at quick, in a priority, So we've had a couple members leave the committee recently, and we're looking for some new people that are interested in helping out. Part of the committee, they do a booth at 4th of July for public outreach. We do training with the committee to teach them how to do the Firewise inspections, because a lot of them are not firefighters. You don't have to be a firefighter to be on the committee. We teach you a little bit about what to look for. We just had a training in October, and so probably next year we'll do another training like that. So kind of where I'm headed with the fuels reduction interests in Payson, we kind of have two problems. We have the community problem of too much vegetation in between the houses and on lots and things like that, which makes it very hazardous if a fire was to come into our town. We also have a problem of too much fuels in the forests around us, which is a problem for Payson because it's a big economic driver for our town, obviously. I mean, most of you that have lived here for a long time, I'm sure, recognize that. Also, another thing that's not really talked about a whole lot, but recently in the newspaper they alluded to it, the watershed problems with fires up on the rim and in the forest. So that's why the forest and how they manage that really concerns us here in the town. Not only because of the water supply from C.C. Cragen that we invested a lot of money in, but also flooding and types of disasters that can cause downstream. So it's kind of a two-pronged approach. Right now, I've been working with property owners in town to clear their properties. There's a lot of people that are very cooperative and very concerned about the fire hazard in Payson. And a lot of the people that have lived here for a long time recognize it, and they'll go out and clear the properties with no problems. However, as you probably know, we have people that live here or that own property here and own houses here that don't live here. And I don't know that it's an intentional thing on their part, but it's not a high priority for them to clear their property sometimes. And saying that, I do have owners that are out of town that are concerned about it too. But what we're working towards is getting an ordinance to require people to clear their properties. A lot of the homeowners associations already have that, but if we can do that for the town, it will standardize everything, and we'll have, pretty much across the board level of requirements to clear properties. And the people that live here probably it's not going to affect them at all, and it'll just motivate some of the people that are more reluctant to do it. That's kind of what we're looking at. And it'll standardize the requirements across the board, so people won't have to be worrying about, well, does this meet the requirements? Does that meet the requirements? We'll have a standardized set of requirements. The way we work that, even if we had an ordinance, is it's a cooperative effort. So even if you have an ordinance, it's better to get the property owner to cooperate with you, to buy into the reasons that you need this fuels management done. That's the number one way to go. Because although the ordinance would have an arm of it that would allow you to forcibly abate or penalize people that didn't cooperate, that's a long road. By the time you get there, that person, the property owner, is just basically ignoring you. you know, so I want to touch on the fact that if we do get an ordinance, it wouldn't affect most people, because most people would be like, you know, okay, yeah, I understand. Help me with what I need to do to make my property safer. Does that make sense? Any questions on, yes, sir?
I've Firewise my property, and between my house and my neighbor's house, he's got a tree probably 12 inches in diameter, and it's a big oak tree, and it's almost touching my roof, and he's got a bunch of junk on his side, and I've talked to him about it. I've even offered to haul all that junk away in my pickup truck, you know, no cost to him. And when I see him, oh, yeah, I'm gonna call the, you know, the tree guy, but nothing's getting done. So, is it legal for me to cut the branches that are hanging over on my property, at least to get some kind of distance
Well,
from that?
I hesitate to give you legal advice, because I'm not a lawyer, so I wouldn't, the best way to do it is like you're trying to, is to cooperate with your neighbor, and I don't like getting involved in between two neighbors, you know, that's a tough
Well,
situation.
it's not,
Um,
you know, I mean, we're friends,
Yeah,
but I mean, it's a danger.
If-
And I mean, I've done my share, I've cleared my whole property, and I've told him.
sure.
He sees me out in the yard, what are you doing? I'm firewising. Oh, yeah, and then I share it with him, and he's all on board with it, and he wants to cut the tree down, and then nothing.
Well, I'd be glad to come out and talk to him if
Okay.
you thought that would help, you
Yeah.
know?
Definitely, thank you very much.
Yeah,
I'll
no
get- I'll
problem.
get your card or your number.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pam here?
I'm also a refugee from California, mainly San Diego.
Ah,
But
excellent.
I'm happy to know that the mayor and a committee are working on doing something about overnight accommodations for the homeless. My concern and my experience comes also from San Diego, that it gets cold and they're out in the open and they want to build a fire, and the next thing you know, the fire gets away, and bingo, we have a major fire here. And I'm happy to know, as I say, that the mayor and the committee are working on this. So I think you're involved in it, Shirley. And people that are resistant to doing all this, a lot of people here, I'm sure, own their homes free and clear. And if they don't carry fire insurance, guess what? They may have not done anything, but they also, because they aren't going to let anybody tell them what to do with their property, they're also not going to have a property except for dirt and no money to build.
Well, and that's the problem, is that one person's property not being managed well can affect the whole community, you know, and bless you. You know, and people talk a lot about paradise. And so one of the things with paradise is they had so much vegetation between all the homes that once the fire started into that community and started going house to house, they didn't have an opportunity to stop it, you know, because it just kept building. And one of the theories behind the, you know, fire adaptive community and firewising is to create some kind of a barrier between houses so that the fire can't just, you know, so the fire department has a chance to stop it at some point, you know. If you don't have those breaks in there, if you don't have that fuel mitigation, then the fire just keeps building, and it will keep, you know, going through houses and everything else in this way. So,
Okay, Irv has a question back there.
Yes. I'm wondering, I Firewise my property. My neighbors have done their property, most of it. However, the town has property that comes almost up to ours, and it is a mess. Who do we have to get a hold of to get that cleaned up? Because that is where our problem comes.
well, give me a call or have me come out and I'll look at it with you. You know, one of the issues is that, and everybody that's done firewising knows that it costs money, so finding the money in the budget to do that kind of stuff is sometimes difficult, but if you have a problem with town property, definitely give me a call and let me know about it, and I can work on it for you.
And we have Louise.
I know that it's expensive to get trees cut down, so I called a guy that we know that cuts trees, and I told him I had a proposition for him. And he took about between 25 and 30 oak trees, big oak trees down on our property, and he did it for the firewood for his fireplace. I told him he could either sell it or keep it, I didn't matter to me. And
Excellent.
he got about 4 or 5 cords of wood off of that.
Yeah, that's very good.
And we have Charlie over here.
Yes, sir?
Yeah, I agree, gentleman here about the city property. I live right behind Rumsey Park there. My
Okay.
fence goes right up against it. 5 years I've asked the city, it's growing through my fence, picking up my fence. They promised me everything. The city manager come out and talked, but nothing ever got done. I finally got a lawyer and threatened to sue. They cut 3 foot away from my fence. We've got property, that mountain is a fire trap, and we've got those all through this town, and you come talking to us about Firewise. I said this before, when you guys get your horse in the right lane, then I'll help. It's a good program, but the city has done nothing but fight me. I told them I was going out and trim it away so it wouldn't tear up my fence, and they told me I'd end up in jail. So until we start getting straightened around here, I'm sorry, Firewise is a great thing, but the city and I will not cooperate until they get their horse in the right road.
Well, I'm on your side, and I'll do my best to help you out with that. You know, that's how I can.
I had people come by my house and tell me that I had to straighten my property up, and it could be punitive damages if I don't, but they won't do a damn thing.
Oh, we
This
need
has
to
been
get that
5
fixed.
years I've been fighting them.
Okay, anybody have a question on this side?
We need to get that fixed.
Okay, here's John over
Let me
here.
say this for, oh, you got it, Mike? Okay, go ahead.
Here's John. Tom.
I was involved with the West Yellowstone fire
Oh,
several years ago now, clear back 25, 30 years ago. But what they did, it literally saved that town. They went into further north into Montana and rented or borrowed almost a half a mile of Rainbird sprinklers and cut a line south of the town and then pumped it out of a river or hooked it to a fire hydrant. I don't know what the financial arrangements they did, but they literally saved that town with a Rainbird system almost a half a mile long. But the only cost, real cost of the fire department here would be a fitting that would either then fit their equipment to the Rainbird system is the only piece you would have to buy. But this whole system to use that way is very expensive, just to sit behind the firehouse for 10 years. So you need to work out an arrangement with a local rancher or somebody that has a system where you could get it and borrow it for a short period of time. And another question this gentleman had about branches hanging over your property. They can be cut. There is an Arizona law that allows you to cut those branches if they're hanging over into your property. Thank you.
All right, Marlene?
I know in the forest, you guys are concerned about foliage for Firewise. In the city, or in the community, what about junk in the yards, like he's talking about, like Frank's talking about, all that kind of stuff? What does the city do? Just go say, oh no, you don't have any weeds around your junk? When over there at the hospital, by the hospital on that road there, those filthy yards over there are gonna burn down, not only the hospital, they're gonna get the care center too. Because there's tanks, butane tanks, I don't know how full they are, I don't know anything about them, but they're all over the yards. And junk, old cars, gas in those tanks. What is over there? Well, one of our newly elected council members of the city did his job. He told them about it. The city sent a crew over there. They did almost nothing. And all that junk is still there, but there's not any weeds in the front road. You know what I'm saying? So where's your responsibility on what's going to keep you safe for a fire?
Okay. Junk and trash, and that comes under a different purview. That's the code compliance officer of the town. There is a nuisance abatement ordinance that the town has. And they do have the ability eventually, through the due process of cleaning the property and billing it to the owner.
Do you guys get your heads together and say, hey, we're going to support you for your weeds, and you support us for the junk, or vice versa, or something? You know, we don't
I do
know
work
where
with the
those
code
fit.
compliance officer quite often.
Yeah.
We've had some successful abatements between the two of us, and talking to people and getting them to cooperate. The problem with the ordinance is, like I explained, they do have an ordinance, but by the time you go through it, it could be a year down the road, or
Sure.
a long time, as how legal issues go, to do it. So it's better to get the person on your side and cooperate with you. So I can't, the junk,
Well, obviously,
so that can be
the
a,
city went over there, and the only thing that happened was a few weeds.
so there's
So-
the nuisance abatement code, and there's also vector control that they're concerned about.
This is
So-
no reflection on you, I don't mind my passion. Anybody else?
That's okay, I like passion.
Yeah.
Passion's good.
Pete, you want the mic?
Pete has a question.
Okay. Two questions, one of which is, based on your experience, can you in some way quantify or say, when you look around this town, how high the risk level appears to be to you? First question. Second question is, you talked about getting an ordinance. I mean, is that sometime in the next 5 years? Is that something we're working on right now? Is that something we're likely to see go before the council in some time frame?
So the first question, I guess one clue is that I have been retired from the fire service, and I was concerned about it enough that I applied for the job here. That's one evidence, but there's also been, the Arizona Republic has done studies with, I think it was Today or one of the national news programs, that they did studies on and evaluated, based on Forest Service data and everything else, the hazards of communities in Arizona and actually in California too. And their estimate of Payson was quite a bit higher than Paradise, And if you look at some of the, on YouTube, you can find a bunch of videos on what Paradise used to look like, and people driving down the streets there, and you could get it confused for driving down the streets of Payson very easily. So based on that, I'd say, I agree with them. I think we have a very high potential of having some serious problems with a wildland fire. And, people are working on it, and the forest is working with the forest restoration initiatives, and it is a slow process, but people are working on it. Yes? Nick?
The Firewise committee had tried to get an ordinance through before, and we got a lot of people come to City Hall and complain about, you're not going to tell me what to do with your property, or with my property type of thing. So I don't know how much an ordinance is really, if you could even get it through would help. So there has to be some sort of a motivational, hey, gang, let's do it, type of thing. And I don't know what that is, but I know Darlene Yonker, she worked on that for a long time, and it was rather disappointing. So whatever the rah-rah thing is to get people excited, I'm not sure, but short of a fire, I guess, I don't know.
Well, actually get the feeling, because part of my job is I go around and talk to folks. People call the fire department, and I'll go out and look at their properties for them and help them with complaints, that kind of thing. And really, the overall feeling I get, maybe it's just because they're talking to me, but most of the people I deal with are very concerned about it. And a lot of them, it doesn't take much to motivate them to clean their properties. So, I don't know, probably gotten 20 different properties abated or Firewise just by talking to the people and talking to them about the hazards. So as far as the ordinance goes, it's a draft right now, and it has to go through some processes to be approved. And so as far as the timeline of actually getting to the town again, I'm not sure how long that's going to take. And we're going to take a lot of input on that and suggestions as far as, it's like I said, right now it's a draft, so it may not cover everything that people are concerned about, or it may cover too much, I don't know. But we are working on it, and we do have a draft written up. So
if you want to join us, 1 o'clock on Thursday, we are going to be going over the draft. Just before, Kevin has 2 parts to his presentation. The other part's going to be in here. But just to give you a little bit of background, everybody was really happy with the ordinance that we had in the past. It was a starter ordinance, and the real estate people came to us and said, because there was no teeth in it, if a buyer was coming into town and found out that we had an ordinance to Firewise properties, then the seller would have to Firewise their property as a condition of the sale of the property. And, that could have been done 50-50, that could have been done negotiated, whatever. But they came in and they totally squelched the ordinance that pretty much everybody else had agreed on. So I've got a copy of the old ordinance in my file, bringing it. We got a copy of the new ordinance that he is suggesting, and we're going to talk about the ins and outs of how to get this passed. One of the things is, if it's only complaint driven, you have a street, this person lives next to Frank, and his house is a mess. Frank complains, but 2 houses down, there's a house that's even way, way, way worse, and nobody complains about it. So what we have to look at is how to get everybody. And we are going to be looking for PR people, obviously, to do Facebook and all this stuff, and to understand why. And like Louise said, we took down a whole bunch of oak trees. Well, you don't have to take down every tree on your property. There's zones, and the zones are really darn realistic. And so, there's some really good ways that this town could do it. The other problem is the fire department can only give out the names for referrals to officially licensed and bonded tree or shrub contractors. And so, because I'm on the Firewise committee, I can't tell you that I know of some other people who are willing to participate in helping Firewise for a lesser amount of money than a company that's paying workers' comp and, all of this other stuff, and are more expensive. Because a lot of people just plain old can't afford it, So, or they can get their kids to come up, or they can get their friends and have a neighborhood trimming party. I did a whole lot of it myself at my age, did a whole lot of stuff. I just needed somebody to come in with a chainsaw and go zip, zip, zip on some of the bigger branches, but I cut down all that oak myself, and you could do it a little bit every week in your trash, and Firewise your property of the ladder fuels, and then bring up your tree branches so you can walk under them. And, so it's not as bad as everybody thinks. You're going to have to scalp your yard. Is not the way it is. So anyhow, I would like to introduce Kevin's section 2 now, and that is to come and look at the sim table, which will simulate how a fire would move through town based on wind speed and wind, so go in and walk, stand around and watch how it works. Creek Road, double feature garage.
I don't know if anybody's talking about we code as well as a
He has some WUI stuff in there. It's not the whole WUI code. But we'll see, because we'll come Monday and see, and make a suggestion.
So you're wanting Thursday?
I mean Thursday. Because I can't remember from one day to the next what I'm doing.
They say, well, it's something that they
Dennis, can you work that in the microphone? No, okay. Talk loud.
All right,
I've seen it, you've seen it.
You know why they're there now? Because of the jump across the street. And I don't want to be in my beautiful living room and anyway, then that one that I was talking about, those houses on the corner, on the road, go like that, go to the hospital, you go like this, you go to Pearson. I'm the pastor of the Pearson, and every Sunday morning I go by there and I just half crying when I get there, because I'm afraid they're not gonna get, I feel like they're my patients, but they're my congregation, you know, out of it. And that's why I got stirred up. I usually get passionate and try to talk about this stuff. And let me tell you something else. All across America, the reason we're not getting anywhere, the reason everybody's getting away with everything, we don't discipline anymore. There's no discipline in the home, which school took care of, besides the back parents don't take care of. Okay, yeah. Slap on the wrist if you go down here and slap some old lady on the face and knock her down on the street. You know, and they did that here, you know? And they have no respect for anybody because they don't have to. Look at Washington, D.C. We can't get any stinking indictment out of all of this in 3 years. So that's what's wrong. There's no discipline.
That's a nice breeze.
That a man that doesn't discipline his child doesn't love the child. But it also says, yeah, right, that punishment also says that punishment does not hurt, is not good. So, you know, this doesn't hurt. Yeah, like heck, Daddy, want to trade places? I felt his belt.
Not playing in the sand?
Yeah. I've seen enough sand, thank you.
Yep. You have a pen? Do you need a pen?
Here, this is on our,
Okay.
I'm not taking notes.
I'm just tired of all of it, you know. I'm so tired of all this stuff going on in this city. We have one guy across the street from us going on and built this house.
You've got time to warn us.
Evacuate, but they got the house one way in and one way out. You know what we need? Ever since I moved here, ever since we moved here, I said, you know, we ought to have a beautification project for the town that the city runs. Any connection with the fire department and the junk department. The junk department was he talking about?
This part of the town,
Carefree circle.
their design was that they didn't overload the road. Yeah, that's for people turning.
And, so you get down and start talking to me, then we received complaints, that somebody was starting a business. On property. Actually, no, I wasn't make sure how that plan, you know, I do a red stick. It wasn't my garage, you see, I was renting. And the landlord, landlady, was converting her garage to ready for themselves on weekends. So that people were hearing the sound zoning going on, people were starting a business, starting a fire, so he came out to stop that. I told him what was going on, I said, okay, no problem. I was really not, to deal with something. But on the corner here on Easy Street, 3 houses closed, just under the.
But our phones
He was code enforcement.
You can still sign up. It's called
Did he never bridge with, there's fines for that? Well, see, the guy in front of me, on my house is. And I've got a lot of junk in my yard, but not glass and stuff, because you can't get it in the garbage can.
Operations between the sheriff, the fire department, and the police. Be a combined effort through the day.
Junkers out there.
There's a lot of them that actually got onto there was cars breaking out in another story place, things like that. So, I mean, they're just trying to, everybody tried to evacuate at exactly the same time.
Am I in your way to do
On top
your
of that,
job?
the other problem they
Am
have
I
is
in your
getting
way to
equipment
do your job?
into Paradise, as all these people are evacuating. Yeah. So it's one of our thoughts too, and that's why the mayor has been working on trying to get another exit out of Green Valley Park, Green Valley area. Because we don't want to overload the road where the equipment's coming in. So that's some of our thoughts of what could take place here.
What I did here was I painted a 50% fuel reduction.
So this model is taking account of the existing vegetation in terms of rate of spread?
Yeah, and the topography.
This
So
this whole
I
thing is
painted a-
designed, the picture that you see, this whole thing is designed by satellite. And it's kept up to date by satellite photos.
Wow, look how fast that's
Yeah,
spreading.
and it's going up here. Up the ridge.
So it'll pick up, it's made so that you can start the fire with the laser here. So I painted a fuel reduction zone in there, so hopefully we'll be able to see it hit that fuel reduction zone. And you'll be able to tell.
That's in the southeast part of town where it's a Firewise community. So it should and also the Forest Service did a
Fuels reduction.
300-foot fuels reduction between the tribe and that neighborhood.
So you can
So
see
see,
where it's trying to go around
It's
that.
spreading,
Oh, yeah, in other words, you put it right here, it's for
Yes.
fuel reduction?
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's Main Street, just right up there?
And where it came across is
there,
the lower
okay.
part of Main Street,
Yeah.
but it's not in the Firewise area. That's that lower part off of Phoenix Street on lower
Boy, look at it
Phoenix Street
making
and
that run
87.
down the hill.
Do you have a consensus on pretty much where a fire would start? A certain little area, like up on the rim? Or, because, I mean, starting directly in the middle of town, is that realistic?
Not normally, I mean, it's human interactions is usually.
Be like a camper somewhere, maybe?
It could be.
The homeless
I mean,
trying to
There's a
keep
lot of
warm.
different
Yeah.
factors, you know. A lot of the biggest fire that affected, or had a potential to really do a lot of direct damage to Payson, I think it's called the Willow Fire. Willow or Wallow? Wallow.
That was over by,
So it started down over here by the Mattisels.
Really?
And came within 4 miles
When
of
was
the town.
That was several years ago.
That was in
2003.
2005, because we almost didn't be able to move up here because of that fire.
And then there was a fire not long, it just backed up to the backfire and got to that burn area and just
Yeah.
a couple of years ago.
Well, so that's the thing, the whole thing with the fuels mitigation is we're trying to give the firefighters a chance to get in and catch the fire, you know. It's still like, even with that 50%, it eventually will burn through that, you know, but at least it gives you a space to get in there and
We
work.
need time. That's the whole thing, we need
I mean,
time to...
doesn't the amount of vegetation in town, let's say you have a house fire, makes it a lot harder to prevent that house fire from spreading to other houses
Sure.
next door?
That's kind of what happened in Paradise, is that it started going house to house and through the vegetation between the houses, because there was so much vegetation there between the houses. So, you know, you get the radiant heat and that kind of things that will start the next house on fire.
How many
Without the
acres
flames even touching.
in town, like my place there, right by Rumsey Park? That whole mountain is nothing but brush. Down into town, over close to your area, behind that, it's nothing but just thick forest.
Up behind the
Are they
police
gonna be
station.
doing anything with any of that? They tell me they not because they don't have the money.
Well, I mean, obviously that.
I'm sorry, I mean,
No, no,
I
it's
really
just fine.
was into Firewise, and every time they stopped me, they fought me, they threatened to throw me in jail, and I just got sick and tired of it. And I haven't seen them trimming any of these mountains in town that's just packed with brush.
I know that the parts of Ramsey Park, they did do fuel mitigation on about 4 years ago or
A
so.
little area right along McCully.
And they did it up the mountain there from where the ball fields are and stuff, up that mountain that you're talking about. But the problem too is in Payson, our vegetation grows back in 3 years. You know, then you have to treat it again. So it's an ongoing thing. You can't just do it once and then let it go.
I couldn't get any help from the city, and they fought me. And when they threatened to throw me in jail if I cleared my fence, that was the last straw.
Well, I'll try and help you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, because I mean, I'm at the point where I'm, and I don't want to pull away from Firewise, because this is what saves our community.
That's the objective.
Okay, thank you.
Who
Yes, sir.
did
Yeah, the ordinance you're talking about, is it just, you know, fuel management, or is there a WUI component to what we're looking at?
So, you mean
in
as
terms
far
of
as the
building code
building
and-
construction? Right now, there is not. The chief has asked me to develop that part of it. So right now, what's written is just a vegetation management code.
Got to start small and grow.
Well, you know, there was a WUI.
Yeah,
Yeah, so kind of
that got shot down too.
I'm doing at this point is separating the two, the building code standards and the vegetation management standards, so that, you know, we can go at them both independently, so that one, if somebody's unhappy with one, it doesn't kill the other, kind of thing. So,
Is Mesa Dell in pretty big risk as well?
well, I mean, it has the same issues in a lot of ways, but the Forest Service has done some fuel breaks around that.
You can tell all, right along here, that's all thin.
Yeah, they've done fuel
Right.
breaks pretty much all around there, and
Yeah.
they've done fuel breaks all around Payson on this side.
Who did the
But they
topo?
need to, pardon me?
Who did the topo?
This is a Google map kind of thing from the internet. The program is set up so you can here, I'll show you. You shape the sand.
Okay.
So this gives you an idea of how to shape the sand. You know,
Yeah.
the blue is the lowest, so that you can see the
Yeah.
river drainage there. So you shape the sand to this, and if I was better at shaping sand, it would look a little better, but.
That's what you were doing over here. You were playing in
Playing in
the
the
sandbox,
sandbox.
huh?
Should have invited us over, we'd have all helped.
Really?
I know.
I brought my little fire truck.
This is actually walnut shells, or
Yeah.
supposed to be,
How long we had this program, where did we get it?
this was donated by the guy that developed it. I guess his brother actually lives in Payson, and said you should donate it to our town, so he did. So
You mentioned the Forest Service doing a fire break. How far around the city have they gone? Because I know they've done it up by the airport.
yeah, they've done it all up at the airport. They've done down here all the way across. But the problem is, you know, they need to maintain it too. You know,
Right.
It's been done probably with, you know, 5 years ago,
And that's money.
and it's all money.
A few years ago, the house owners in Chaparral Pines were not allowed to cut a bush down. Has that changed?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah, they do actually trim, tidy it up, do they now?
They actually are one of the communities that have a
There's
HOA
still
rule
an
that
awful lot of bushes
requires-
there.
Yeah, they actually have HOA rules that require you to firewise your property. So there are some,
My house is sort of looking down on top of Chaparral Pines, but it still looks as though it's just masses of vegetation.
okay. Well, and firewising doesn't mean wiping all the vegetation out. I mean, it's a mitigation. So the way to be 100% safe is to have concrete in 10 miles in every direction.
Yeah.
You know, that's not why we moved here.
Put a few big trees and cut out the ladder fuel.
So there's always, it's always going to be, there's always an element of risk. But what we're trying to do is manage that risk, you know? Make it, like I said, make it so the fire department has a chance, make it so you have a chance to get out, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, you know what helped me was I went to a couple briefings on Firewise. That guy Dave, he's an arborist, I can't remember his last name. Molesky, yeah. And the education that he gave me in that 1 hour, if you could somehow educate, do little seminars or something to people, because that's 90% of it right there is your education.
I agree.
You know, if you could somehow do it, but
like I said,
it's a big town, you know.
Yeah, 90% of the people are right there with you, and they'll go out and clear the
I wanted
properties.
to make a comment too. When we lived in Australia, we fought a ground fire. And this was actually fairly low brush. It was maybe trees that were maybe 10 feet tall at the most. And this is because the seasons were reversed. This was New Year's Day, and it was 112 degrees Fahrenheit.
Across the street
And we
from us.
stood on the, we were trying to stop the fire on the road to keep them jumping the road. And that fire was coming at us at 50 miles an hour. And it wasn't the wind, it was the fact that the fire was so hot that the trees ahead of it would burst into flames from the heat.
Then they had the exploding black boys.
Yeah.
These are a bush that has a natural gunpowder inside. When it heats up, it explodes.
And it explodes like a hand grenade.
Fortunately, we don't have that.
No, but it is fun. It looks like a yucca.
So is firewising enforceable?
That's what we're going to try and do, is get a little enforcement
There's a
component to those
There's a
people that don't
balancing
want
act
to
though you
cooperate.
have to do, because it's costly.
It is.
So you've gotta, you can't force somebody to go through their life savings, but yet you've gotta be able to enforce it also.
Even when I go out and talk to people that are interested in it, I prioritize things for them. You know, you don't, if you have a property that's pretty well overgrown, you don't have to do the whole property in 2 weeks. You know, you do a little bit one year, you do a little bit the next year, but you prioritize it so that, you know, every time you do it, it makes it a little safer.
So are you asked to come to their homes, or do you just drive by and say, this is not good, I need to stop and knock on this
We
person's
have to be invited onto their property.
Most of the
By
time.
the
By the
homeowner?
property.
Most of the time, I'd say 95% of the time, I'm asked by the homeowner to come out and look at their property, or somebody's complaining about the next property over, that kind of thing. But I have stopped and knocked on people's doors and talked to them about stuff. But I don't go at it like, do this or you're gonna, you know, or we're gonna throw the book at you. You know, I explain to them about what the importance of.
When is the Forest Service going to start clearing the forest? My property is right alongside the forest, and I have to do the first 100 feet of the forest, because they don't do it.
They have done some, like I said, and it's a matter of time and money.
Well, they made an awful fuss when I went to them and I said, look, we've got to clear this forest. They didn't really want me to go in there to do anything. I said, well, I'm going to because of the fire risk. So we cleared it.
According to the Forest Service folks that I talked to,
Don't cut the big trees, they said. I said, we won't cut the big trees, we'll cut the ladder fuels and the scrub.
but
So we've done an
supposedly
awful lot of it.
they will allow that. They just want you to go and ask them before you just start doing it.
Yeah, I went and asked them and told them I was going to do it.
So they're, as far as I know, they're okay with that. You can go in, I think they said 30 feet into the
Well, they said
forest.
100 foot.
Did they? So, I mean, you're helping them
Because
basically.
I'm over here, and I've got a long, not as long as that obviously, but quite a long fence. Just 2 strands of barbed wire. So we just go through and do it.
Yeah, so, I mean, as far as, they're very cooperative with that.
Well, they have to be because they haven't got the staff to do it themselves.
Yeah.
Or the money.
One of the things is the grants. There are grants available, and the problem is, when the Forest Service gets money for their grants, once you have Firewise an area, you can't re-Firewise it on a grant anymore, but you have to get people to maintain it. But people can get grants if they apply, and we're looking to get grants where people that are elderly people that can't do it anymore or whatever,
Well, eventually down the road, I'd like to start a town program that helps out with that.
a town
you know, so that
program
we
to,
can
yeah.
not only help people that are disadvantaged or whatever.
Are those mine?
But we
Yeah.
can pick up brush for everybody, and we can clear the town properties, you know, maintain. But that's a ways down the road, you know.
Well, it's education. You know, this stuff's serious. People aren't, a lot of people don't take it serious.
And unfortunately, to do the program kind of the way I'd like to do it, you know, we need to get money somehow, and, you know, getting a bond or something like that is probably the most likely way to get that kind of money.
Has anyone ever done a volunteer program where, you know, like people volunteer to clean up along the highway? Get people together to clean property that people can't afford to do it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know, I mean, I know like certain churches and community groups have got together people that do that kind of thing.
Yeah, the only thing is Kevin cannot refer those people.
Yeah, I don't refer anybody actually, you know, I have a list of people that do Firewise stuff, but I don't recommend them. It's the only reason I give people names is so that they can go out and get bids and, you know, find out for themselves.
But those are the licensed people.
Yeah, they're licensed and that kind of thing.
So anyhow, also there, a couple of years ago, Kevin, I don't know whether you knew it, we had a red tag, green tag program. And Toby Law used to go out and around different neighborhoods and walk up and leave a note on their door that your house looks great, it's nice and clean, da-da-da, or a red tag that says, would you please contact us regarding firewising your property because it is a danger to you and a danger to your neighbors, or, you know, something to that effect.
And then you can come out and advise them on
And
what,
then,
yeah.
yeah, we would send somebody out to advise.
Seems like the insurance companies would eventually start driving the program by
Well,
not
they do.
insuring people.
They do. They do have that, yes. Because you know what? They have Google Maps too. And they can look it down on your property or the properties next door and say that you're at risk of fire because of all of the,
Have they done that? Have they done that? Or-
yes,
I know in
and they've even done it,
California.
you know, my son and daughter-in-law, you know, live down in the valley with no trees, big grass,